My name is Sabrina Ellington, and I'm 17 years old. By the time most girls my age are worrying about SAT scores and homecoming dresses, I already knew exactly how many grams of carbs were in a bowl of cereal, how to prime an insulin pen in the dark, and how long it takes twin toddlers to go from kind of fussy to full scale meltdown. I didn't earn that knowledge in a medical program or a babysitting class. I earned it by being my mother's backup parent. Most people think this story starts on the day my mother sat us all down in the living room and announced she was pregnant again. That's the clip the internet would share if this ever made the news. The pale teenage girl on the couch, the faded robe barely closing over my mother's rounded stomach, my little brother staring like he's seen a ghost. But that's not where it started. It started 7 years earlier, on a Tuesday morning, when my father walked out the front door and never came back. One minute he was drinking coffee in a shirt that still smelled like laundry detergent. The next, he was a silence we learned to live around. Ever since then, my mother has tried to fill the hole he left with more children. And I've been the one holding everything together. That morning, the one that finally snapped something in me, started like all the worst ones do, with too much to do and not nearly enough of me to go around. Sabrina, can you get the twins dressed while I fix breakfast? Mom's voice floated in from the kitchen, thin and frayed. It always sounded like that now, like someone had turned the volume up on her exhaustion and left it there. I sat at our scratched dining table, hunched over my laptop. The cursor blinked on the blank space where the last paragraph of my early decision college essay should have been. Deadline, today. I'm trying to finish my essay, Mom, I called back, fingers flying. Early decision is due today. This could literally decide my entire future. My 13-year-old brother Cameron appeared in the doorway, backpack already slung over one shoulder, hair sticking up at the back where he hadn't seen the mirror yet. I can help with Sophia and Isabella, he offered, voice barely above a whisper. He always talked like that in the mornings, like being too loud might make Mom crack. I shook my head without looking up. No, you need to check your blood sugar and pack your lunch. I've got the twins. But you always have it. That made me look up. His eyes were ringed with dark circles, the tiredness etched into his face in a way that didn't belong on a 13-year-old. For a moment I saw us from the outside, two kids pretending to be adults, in a house that still smelled faintly of baby formula and burnt coffee. You look exhausted, he added quietly. I was up until 3 finishing my AP Biolab report. I rubbed at my eyes. My contacts felt like sandpaper. I'm fine. He didn't look convinced, but he turned back toward the kitchen, pressing his glucometer to his fingertip like it was just another part of the morning routine instead of a tiny act of survival. Mom shuffled in a minute later, the hem of her faded robe dragging along the floor. It barely closed over her stomach, which I'd assumed was just more of the same late-night snacking and stress. Girls, boys, everyone. Living room, she said, waving one hand in a vague circle. Now, where's Andrew, and where are the twins? Andrew's in the bathroom, Cameron reported, already slipping into the role he'd been drafted into. The twins are still asleep. Can this wait, Mom? I pleaded. Please, I'm almost done with my essay. This won't take long, sweetheart, she said, lowering herself onto the couch like gravity had increased just for her. I went to see Dr. Morrison yesterday. Something in her voice made my stomach clench. I looked up properly then, really looked at her. The bloodshot eyes, the forced brightness when she tried to smile, the way her gaze always slid just past us, like we were a reflection she couldn't quite bring into focus. Are you sick? I asked. No, honey. A strange, dreamy smile spread across her face. Her hand drifted to her stomach. I'm pregnant. For a moment, the word didn't make sense. It hung in the air like smoke after an explosion. Again, Cameron whispered, his face going pale. It's a blessing, Mom insisted, her fingers pressing protectively against her robe. Another precious gift to cherish. Another precious gift for Sabrina to raise, you mean? Cameron muttered, a little louder than I think he meant to. Cameron, Mom's smile snapped off. That's enough. I stared at her, and suddenly it was like a filter had come off my vision. The perpetually tired eyes, the way her smile never reached them, the way she disappeared, mentally, emotionally, whenever the crying got too loud or the problems too complicated, the way every new baby came with big speeches about family and love, and then somehow ended with another set of tiny hands reaching for me in the middle of the night. Who's going to take care of this one, Mom? I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. We all will, she said immediately. As a family, the way families do. Her eyes, I noticed, were fixed on the wall behind my head. No, I said. It was a small word, one syllable, but it felt like stepping through glass. Mom's head snapped toward me like I'd slapped her. Excuse me? I'm 17 years old, I said, feeling heat flood my chest. I've been a parent since I was 10. I've changed more diapers than most actual adults I know. I've missed winter formals, sleepovers, study sessions, and about 2,000 hours of sleep to take care of your children. Our family, she corrected sharply. Your children, I repeated, my voice shaking now. Your responsibility. I closed my laptop with a sharp click that sounded louder than it should have in the quiet room. The half-finished essay glared at me from behind the screen. But for once, the thing I was most worried about wasn't a grade. I love my siblings, I said, more than anything. But I can't do this anymore. I won't do this anymore. Sabrina, don't be so dramatic. Her tone sharpened. The familiar guilt knife. We need you here. That's exactly the problem, I shot back. You need me. You've built your entire life around needing me to be the adult you refuse to be. My phone buzzed against the table. I glanced at the screen. Zoe, still picking you up in 20. Coffee run before school. You alive? I stared at the message for a second longer than I should have. Zoe's parents with their extra guest room. The quiet conversations we'd had about if you ever need to get out. I looked back at my mother, my brothers, the invisible chains I'd been dragging for years. I'm moving out, I heard myself say. The room seemed to tilt. Mom blinked, then actually laughed, a nervous, high-pitched sound that didn't match her face. What? Where would you even go? You can't be serious. Zoe's parents offered me their guest room, I said. Months ago. I just wasn't ready to say yes until now. You cannot just abandon your family, Sabrina. I won't allow it. Her voice rose, frayed around the edges. You're a child. From upstairs, there was a soft thud, then the patter of small feet. Aubrey? Except it wasn't Aubrey. That was the girl I used to be in a different version of this story. In this one, my 7-year-old brother Andrew appeared at the top of the stairs in dinosaur pajamas, hair rumpled, eyes wide. Why is everyone yelling? He asked. My heart squeezed. He hadn't done anything to deserve this life any more than I had. It's okay, buddy, I said, forcing my voice calm. Just grown-up stuff. Go back to bed. You're not a grown-up, Mom scoffed. You're a child making a childish, selfish decision. No, Mom. I stood up, and somehow I felt taller than I'd ever felt in that house. I'm the child who never got to be a child because you kept having babies you expected me to mother. I'm the kid who taught herself to make formula at midnight. I'm the one who learned how to treat Cameron's hypoglycemia at 11. I've been to more pediatrician appointments than most actual parents. As if the universe wanted to underline the scene, the twins started wailing upstairs. Their cries braided together into that familiar siren song of need. Go, I said, grabbing my laptop and my backpack. My hands were shaking, but I didn't loosen my grip. They need their mother, not their sister. For a second, she just stared at me, torn between the crying babies and the daughter slipping out of her control. Then she turned and trudged toward the stairs, one hand on the railing, the other rubbing her forehead. After dropping everyone at school and daycare, yes, one last time because my guilt's a stubborn thing, I sat in my ancient Honda Civic in the school parking lot and called Zoe. Today? She asked, no hesitation in her voice. You're really ready? Yeah, I said, and for the first time, the word felt like it belonged to me. I'm done raising my mother's children. By late afternoon, I'd stuffed my life into 2 duffel bags and a backpack, clothes, my laptop, a stack of notebooks full of homework and grocery lists and blood sugar readings. Evidence of the double life I'd been living. I stood in the doorway of my bedroom for a long moment. The posters on the wall, the pile of laundry I hadn't gotten to, the twin crib in the corner that still smelled faintly like baby lotion because Mom couldn't handle stairs at night. Peace, I'd decided, was worth the guilt. Zoe's parents' house smelled like garlic and tomatoes when we pulled into their driveway. Her mom had made lasagna to celebrate your first night of not being on diaper duty, she joked, but her eyes were soft with something like understanding. The guest room they'd prepared was painted a soft blue, with a bed that looked like it would actually be comfortable, a small desk, and, luxury of luxuries, a door that locked from the inside. That night, I crawled into that bed, texted Cameron and Andrew goodnight, and stared at the ceiling for a long time. For the first time in 8 years, I slept through the night. I should have known it wouldn't last. Peace in my life never did. 9 days. That's how long the peace lasted. 9 mornings of waking up without a baby monitor on my nightstand. 9 afternoons where my biggest worry was whether my Common App essay sounded pretentious instead of whether Cameron's blood sugar was crashing. 9 evenings of eating dinner that I didn't cook, at a table where nobody was crying. By the 9th day, I'd almost started to believe this could be my life now. Zoe leaned against the locker beside mine, tapping the edge of her college brochure against her palm. "I'm telling you, you'd love their social work program," she said. "They have this track where you can specialize in youth advocacy." "You just want me at the same school as you," I teased, swapping out my textbooks. "That too," she admitted. "But mostly, I want you somewhere where the biggest crisis is someone stealing your laundry from the dorm dryers." I opened my mouth to reply. That's when I heard it. "Where is she? Where is my daughter? I need my daughter, Sabrina." My mother's voice cut through the hallway noise like a siren. Conversations stuttered and broke. Heads turned toward the main entrance. A ripple of whispers moved through the crowd before I even had time to process the words. Zoe's eyes widened. "Please tell me that's not—" But it was. I turned, and there she was, pushing through the crowded corridor like a storm front. Mom, in her same faded robe, thrown over leggings, hair unwashed and pulled into a lopsided bun. The twins strapped into a massive double stroller, cheeks sticky, one of them already starting to cry. Andrew clung to her free hand, his sneakers half-tied, his face tight with panic. More than one person pulled out their phone. "Oh no," Zoe breathed. She didn't. "Sabrina!" Mom spotted me and began dragging the stroller down the hallway, bumping into backpacks and bumping past clusters of students. "You need to come home right now. The twins haven't stopped crying since you left. Andrew wet the bed last night because you weren't there to remind him to use the bathroom. Cameron's blood sugar's been all over the place." My face burned. I could already see the TikToks in my head. Teenage girl abandons her siblings. Mom storms school. The captions would write themselves. Zoe automatically stepped half in front of me, like a human shield. "Mrs. Ellington, you can't just show up at school like this," she said carefully. "This isn't the—" "Stay out of family business," Mom snapped, her face flushed, eyes wild. "Sabrina, get your things. We're leaving." The twins started fussing in the stroller, overwhelmed by the noise and the fluorescent lights. Andrew's grip on her hand tightened. "Is there a problem here?" Mr. Kowalski, my English teacher, appeared at the edge of the growing circle, concern etched into the lines of his face. "Yes," Mom said immediately, tears springing to her eyes like she'd flipped a switch. "There is. My daughter abandoned her family when we need her most. She just left us." Whispers surged, hungry and sharp. "Abandoned. Left us." People only hear those parts. "That's not what happened," I said, my voice shaking. "Mom, this isn't the place for this. You need to leave." "When is the place, Sabrina?" she demanded, voice rising. "You blocked my number. You won't answer texts. You've ghosted your own family." "Mrs. Ellington," Mr. Kowalski said gently, "let's take this to the office. We can't have this conversation in the hall." The principal must have been notified, because by the time we reached the administrative office, Principal Warren was waiting behind his desk, expression tense. "Come in," he said. "Let's all sit down." Mom pushed the stroller into the room. Andrew slipped from her hand and bolted toward me, wrapping his arms around my waist like he thought I might vanish if he didn't hold on tight. "I miss you," he whispered, his voice muffled against my sweater. "Why don't you live with us anymore?" My throat closed. "I miss you too, buddy," I said softly, resting my hand on his hair. "But I had to leave. It's complicated." He pulled back, searching my face with big, confused eyes that made me want to tear the world apart and rebuild it in a way that didn't hurt him. "Let's start from the beginning," Principal Warren said calmly, folding his hands. "Mrs. Ellington, you said Sabrina left home." "She disappeared," Mom said immediately. No warning, no discussion. "She vanished from our lives and abandoned 4 children who depend on her. I didn't even know where she was. I had to find out from some girl's parents that my own daughter was living in their house." "I told you I was leaving," I said, my voice tight. "I told you I couldn't do it anymore. You just didn't believe me because you've never actually heard me." Mr. Kowalski shifted his weight, glancing between us. "Miss Ellington," Principal Warren said, "your mother indicates you've been helping care for your siblings quite extensively." "Helping?" The word came out like a bitter laugh. "Is that what we're calling it?" Mom's eyes snapped toward me, warning. "I've been their primary caregiver since I was 10, I said, the words spilling out faster now that I'd started. "I'm the one who gets up at 2 in the morning when the twins have nightmares. I'm the one who monitors Cameron's blood glucose levels. I'm the one who makes their lunches, schedules their doctor's appointments, attends parent-teacher conferences. I had to leave early for your class last week, remember?" I glanced at Mr. Kowalski. "Because there was a mix-up with daycare, I had to fix it." "That's absurd," Mom cut in. I'm their mother. I do all those things. She's exaggerating because she's angry. Really? I turned to her. When was the last time you took Cameron to his endocrinologist? She opened her mouth, closed it. What was his last A1C result? I asked. Do you know his current insulin to carb ratio? Silence. It's 1 to 15, I said quietly, looking at the principal. It's been that for 6 months. His last A1C was 7.2, which is too high. His next appointment is in 2 weeks, Tuesday at 3:30, with Dr. Patel. The room went very still. Mr. Kowalski looked down at his folded hands. Principal Warren's eyebrows pressed together. Mrs. Ellington, he said carefully, how many children do you have? 4, she said, soon to be 5. Her hand drifted to her stomach as if they needed reminding. And you expect Sabrina to help manage their care? He asked. She's always been so natural with them, Mom replied. So capable. I just need a little help until I get my feet under me again. It's been 8 years, I said, my voice cracking. You keep saying you'll get your feet under you, but you never do. You just keep having more kids and assuming I'll pick up the slack. Principal Warren exhaled slowly. I think we should bring in our school counselor, he said. This sounds like it may be more than just a disagreement. That won't be necessary, Mom said sharply, standing. Sabrina, get your things. We're going home. I'm not going anywhere, I said. You're 17, she snapped. You're a minor. You have to do what I say. Actually, another voice said from the doorway, that's not entirely accurate. Ms. Rodriguez, the school counselor, stepped into the room. She was holding a folder, but her eyes were soft and steady. I've been briefed, she said. With your permission, Principal, I'd like to speak with Sabrina alone for a few minutes. Mom started to object, but Principal Warren cut in. I think that's appropriate. Mrs. Ellington, you and I can talk out here with Mr. Kowalski while Ms. Rodriguez meets with your daughter. I glanced at Andrew, at the twins fussing in the stroller, at my mother's flushed, furious face. It's okay, I told Andrew gently, prying his hands from my sweater. I'll be right back. Ms. Rodriguez's office smelled like lavender and old paper. The walls were lined with posters about college readiness and mental health awareness, and one crooked print that said, "You deserve to feel safe in your own life." I sank into the chair across from her desk, suddenly aware of how tired my body was. What you described earlier in the office, she said gently, that's called parentification. I frowned. A parenti what? Parentification, she repeated. It's when a child is forced to take on adult responsibilities that are inappropriate for their age, especially caring for siblings or even a parent at the expense of their own development. I thought it was just normal oldest kid stuff, I said weakly. You know, helping out, babysitting. There's a difference, she said. Helping is folding laundry, watching your siblings for a couple hours on a Saturday night. What you described, monitoring a diabetic child's medical care since you were 11, being the primary caregiver for toddlers, sacrificing your education and social life, that goes far beyond helping. Heat pricked behind my eyes. When you've lived in a situation like that for a long time, she continued, it can feel normal, but it isn't. And it's not okay for a child to carry that kind of responsibility. I don't want my siblings taken away, I blurted. If I say too much, will they end up in foster care? I don't want that. I just want to be 17. I want to apply to college and go to prom and maybe have a part-time job where my biggest problem is folding t-shirts wrong. There are options besides removal, she said gently. Family intervention services, parenting support, mandatory counseling. My job is to help you be safe without punishing your siblings. So what happens now? I whispered. I'm a mandated reporter, she said. That means I have to report certain situations to the appropriate agencies. But I also know people whose entire job is working with families like yours. I've already contacted a family services specialist. Her name is Karen Morrison. She works with Family First Support Center. She'd like to meet with you. I stared at the floor. My mom is going to hate me. Your mother may be angry, Ms. Rodriguez said, but you are not responsible for her feelings. You are responsible for telling the truth about what's been happening to you. That's the first step toward changing it. When I stepped back into the hallway outside the office, Zoe was waiting with my backpack slung over her shoulder. Her expression was a mix of worry and barely contained rage. Your mom left, she said before I could ask. The second Ms. Rodriguez mentioned CPS, she grabbed the kids and practically ran out of here. Of course she did. She'll be back, I said, the words tasting like old dread and new steel. She can't do this without me. She's never had to. That's not your problem to solve, Zoe said firmly. Ms. Rodriguez appeared behind me, setting a hand lightly on my shoulder. She's right, she said. The kids can be helped through proper channels. You don't have to sacrifice your entire adolescence to hold your family together. I looked from Zoe's determined face to Ms. Rodriguez's steady gaze. Behind them, the glass window of the office reflected a girl I barely recognized, tired, scared, but standing her ground. Somewhere between the hallway and that office, the story had shifted. This wasn't just about a selfish daughter and a struggling mom anymore. Now there were words for what was happening to me. Now there were adults who couldn't pretend they didn't see. And somewhere out there was a woman named Karen Morrison who, whether my mother liked it or not, was about to step into our lives and change everything. If you had asked me before all this what a family services office looked like, I probably would have imagined something cold and sterile, gray walls, metal chairs, the faint smell of hand sanitizer, and hopelessness. Karen Morrison's office was the opposite. The walls were painted a warm honey gold, covered in drawings made by kids, stick figure families, rainbows, animals with too many legs. A shelf in one corner overflowed with picture books, puzzles, and toys, as if the room wanted to remind every child who walked in. You're allowed to be young here. Karen herself looked like exactly the kind of adult you'd trust with your worst secrets. Kind eyes, steady posture, a face that didn't perform sympathy, but lived in it. "Thank you for coming, Sabrina," she said as I sat down with my hands clenched in my lap. "Ms. Rodriguez told me a bit about the situation, but I want to hear it from you, in your words." I told her everything. Not all at once, not dramatically, just honestly. How I learned to make formula before I learned to solve quadratic equations. How the twins slept better in my arms than anyone else's. How my mother would forget Cameron's glucose checks and I'd have to quietly fix it before he got sick. How I would sneak homework into the laundry room because it was the only place quiet enough to think. How leaving home didn't feel like freedom. It felt like treason. By the time I finished, my tea had gone cold. Karen tapped notes into her tablet, then folded her hands. "Sabrina, what you're describing isn't typical sibling responsibility. It's not helping out. It's not even heavy chores." I waited, heart pounding. "This is called chronic parentification," she said softly. "And yes, legally speaking, it is considered a form of neglect." There it was, the word, the one I'd been avoiding naming my entire life. Neglect. It felt like swallowing a stone. I stared at my hands. I don't want my mom to get in trouble." Karen nodded. "I know. Most children in your situation don't. You've been protecting her for years. But my job isn't to punish your mother. It's to protect you and your siblings, and to make sure your family gets the support it needs so this cycle ends." I swallowed. I don't want my siblings taken away. "That is not the goal," she said firmly. "There are many steps before removal is even considered. Support services, parenting classes, in-home aid, therapy. What you've done by leaving, by setting a boundary, was the first step toward breaking an unhealthy dynamic." Her voice softened. "You saved yourself, Sabrina, and that is nothing to be ashamed of." I pressed my lips together hard, trying not to cry. "I want them to have a mom," I whispered. "A real mom, not me, not anymore." "And that," Karen said, "is exactly why we're here." The second time I visited Karen's office, the air was thicker. Because my mother was sitting there too. Not in her robe this time, but in jeans and a clean sweater, though her hair was pulled back in a way that suggested she'd done it in the car. She held her purse like it was a shield, fingers worrying the strap. Her jaw was tight. "What is all this?" she demanded before I even sat down. "This entire thing is spiraling out of control. You're making it sound like I'm some kind of monster." "We're here to clarify facts," Karen said calmly, "and to talk about support services available to your family." "We don't need services," Mom snapped. "We need Sabrina to stop running away from her responsibilities. Families support each other." My chest tightened. "She's 17, Karen reminded her. "Her legal responsibilities are limited to herself, not to 4 young children." Mom scoffed. "All teenagers babysit their siblings. That's just how it works." "Babysitting is occasional," I said quietly. "A couple hours on a Saturday, not everything." Mom's eyes flashed as if I'd stabbed her. "You're exaggerating." Karen turned to me. "Sabrina, tell your mother what you told me about Cameron's medical care." My mouth went dry, but I forced myself to speak. "How many times have you actually given Cameron insulin?" I asked Mom directly. "How many times have you checked his numbers?" Her lips parted. No sound came out. "Do you know what happens if his sugar drops too low at night?" I pressed. "Do you know what symptoms to look for? Do you know what ketoacidosis is? Do you know how close he came to it last winter?" That was an accident," she sputtered. "I was in the school cafeteria when the nurse called," I said. Because my number is the primary contact on his medical forms, not yours. Karen glanced at Mom. These are serious concerns, Mrs. Ellington. I am doing my best, Mom insisted, voice rising. I have 4 children, soon to be 5. I can't do everything perfectly. That's exactly the point, I said, heat flaring in my chest. You can't. And instead of getting help, you gave everything to me. Mom's eyes filled with tears instantly. You're making me sound like a failure. It's not about sounding like anything, Karen said gently but firmly. It's about acknowledging what's been happening so it can change. If you refuse services, I am required to file an official report to Child Protective Services. That would escalate this beyond my control. Silence. Heavy, sharp. My mother froze. You wouldn't, she whispered. I would, Karen replied, not to punish you, but to protect your children. Mom's tears spilled over. They're all I have. And you're all they have, Karen said. But loving your children and being able to take care of them are not the same thing. Mom clutched her purse tighter. So what do you want from me? Parenting classes, Karen said. A homemade worker 3 days a week. Individual therapy, family therapy, subsidized childcare, regular check-ins with a case manager. Mom stared at her like she'd just been sentenced to prison. And if I refuse, she whispered. Then CPS is contacted immediately, Karen said, her voice velvet-wrapped steel, and they will evaluate the safety and well-being of your children. Mom's breath came out in a shaky exhale. She looked at me. Not with anger, not even with blame, with something raw. Fear. Fear that for the first time in her motherhood, she might lose control over the narrative. I'm not the villain here, she whispered, tears sliding down her face. I've done my best. I've tried so hard. I know, I said softly, my voice cracked. I know you have, but your best hasn't been enough. Not for 4 kids, and not for me. Silence stretched. Then, slowly, painfully, Mom nodded. Fine, she said. I'll do the services, the classes, whatever. Just don't let them take my kids. Karen leaned back, her expression softening. Good. This is the first step. A hard one, but the right one. Mom looked down at her hands. I looked at the drawings on the wall. Somewhere inside me, something loosened. Just a little. Not forgiveness, not yet. But the possibility of it. 6 weeks. That's how long it took before anyone used the word progress without irony. It was a gray Tuesday morning when I walked back into the Family First Support Center for the first supervised visit since Mom agreed to services. The family room was designed to feel homey. Soft carpets, neutral colors, a couch that looked comfortable from a distance but felt oddly firm when you sat on it, like someone had tried to manufacture comfort instead of letting it happen naturally. But what stopped me at the doorway wasn't the room. It was her. My mother. For the first time in years, she looked patched together. Not perfect, not fixed, but present. Her hair was washed and pulled back neatly. She wore real clothes, jeans, a slate blue sweater, and she was on time. Mom had always drifted 10 minutes behind life, blaming the kids, blaming traffic, blaming exhaustion. Today she was sitting upright on that too-firm couch, twisting her fingers, but waiting. When she saw me, she smiled, but it wasn't the brittle smile she always used to cover panic or fatigue. This one was smaller, shaky, real. Hi, sweetheart, she said. I didn't know what to say to a version of her I hadn't met before. How are the classes going? I asked carefully as I sat down. She let out a long breath. Humiliating. Then, unexpectedly, she laughed. A soft, self-deprecating sound I'd never heard from her. I'm serious, she said. I'm in a room full of teenage moms and women, rebuilding their lives from addiction, learning things I thought I already knew. But she twisted her hands, searching for the word. Necessary. It's necessary. I stared at her, not hiding my surprise. Parenting class says punctuality shows respect, she added shyly, for yourself and for others. So, I'm trying. The word trying hovered between us, like a fragile offering. I nodded. I can see that. Before she could respond, the family room door swung open and chaos spilled through it. Cameron barreled in first, backpack bouncing against his side. Andrew sprinted in behind him, sneakers squeaking on the floor. The twins toddled in last, sturdy little legs moving with pure determination as Karen followed, to make sure no one face-planted. Aunt Sabwi, Sabrina! Andrew launched himself into me like a small, enthusiastic meteor. I scored 2 goals at soccer last week, he announced proudly, arms locking around my neck. Mom, from behind him, said softly, I went. I recorded it on my phone. And she brought orange slices, Cameron added, actually smiling. I blinked. You went to the game? Mom nodded shyly. Your therapist helped me organize a calendar. Color-coded. She gave a little shrug. Turns out, those apps work if you actually open them. I laughed before I could stop myself. A real laugh, not the tired ones I used to use to keep the peace. For the next hour, we played. I helped Cameron with a puzzle while the twins tried to climb onto my lap every 10 minutes. Andrew proudly showed me his drawings. Dragons, stars, a scribbly stick figure version of me with spiky hair. But something was different. The twins didn't cling to me like vine-wrapped anchors. They wandered to Mom more, rested tiny hands on her leg, looked to her when they were unsure. And when Sophia tripped on a block and skinned her knee, she didn't run to me. She went straight to Mom. Mom scooped her up instantly, murmuring soothing words, checking the scrape with gentle fingers. Sophia sniffled and clung to her. Mom kissed her forehead, and Sophia settled. For a moment, I sat frozen. This was what it looked like when a mother showed up. Cameron leaned closer to me. She's getting better, he whispered quietly, almost like he didn't want to jinx it. I know, I whispered back. Halfway through the visit, Karen gestured for Mom and me to join her near the side table while the kids played. A subtle shift in tone, something important. Mom swallowed. I want to tell you something, she said to me. I braced myself. It's about the baby. I froze harder. She twisted a strand of her sweater. I'm meeting with an adoption agency. The world seemed to hush. You are? I whispered. She nodded, blinking quickly. For the baby. I'm meeting with a counselor next week. Shock hit me in waves. Of all the outcomes I'd imagined, this wasn't even on the list. That's a huge decision, I said carefully. It's the right one, she whispered, looking at the play area instead of me. I can barely handle 4 kids even with the help. A 5th would undo all of this. I'd slip right back into the patterns that hurt you. Hurt Cameron. Hurt Andrew. I want this baby to have what I didn't give you all. Her voice cracked on the last word. My throat tightened. Mom? She finally met my eyes, and for the first time in so long there was no denial, no defensiveness, no excuses. Just truth. I'm trying, Sabrina, she said. I really am. I felt something inside me soften. Not forgiveness, but acknowledgement. Recognition that the person standing in front of me was not the same one who dragged me into parenthood at 10 years old. When the visit ended, Cameron hugged me tighter than usual. Andrew kissed my cheek loudly. The twins giggled as they waved tiny hands. Mom walked me to the door. Will you keep coming to visits? She asked weakly. I nodded. Yeah, I will. She exhaled in relief. But I didn't promise more than that. Because healing didn't mean going back to what we were. And boundaries didn't have to mean abandonment. As I walked toward Zoe's car, the cool air hit my face and something strange fluttered in my chest. Hope. Small, tentative, but real. 3 months. That's how long it took for my life to start feeling like mine again. My days settled into a rhythm. Steady, breathable, and wholly unfamiliar. A rhythm that didn't revolve around crying toddlers, glucose checks, or last-minute crises. A rhythm that looked like what 17 was supposed to feel like. Waking up without panic, eating breakfast without holding a baby on my hip, walking into school without the weight of 4 childhoods on my shoulders. It felt like learning how to live again. At Zoe's house, I wasn't the third parent. I was just Sabrina. I did my homework at the desk her parents placed under the window. I helped load the dishwasher. I laughed, really laughed, at stupid TikToks with Zoe at midnight. I discovered that I loved debate club more than I ever would have guessed, and that arguing policy points on stage was weirdly therapeutic. And for the first time, I had space for something I'd never allowed myself before, a relationship. Lucas Moreno from my AP government class was the kind of guy who held doors out of instinct, not ego. The kind of guy who didn't get annoyed when I said, I can't talk right now, I'm reading about child welfare laws, and instead sent a thumbs up emoji and a random fact about the topic. He'd heard rumors about my family situation, but never asked for details. Instead, he'd look at me like he saw the girl beneath the burnout, not the exhaustion that clung to me like residue. You always look like you're thinking 10 steps ahead, he told me once as we studied at a cafe. Most people our age only think 1 step ahead, usually about lunch. For a moment, I didn't know how to respond. Nobody had ever spoken to me like that. Like I was someone with a future, not just responsibilities. We weren't serious, we were 17. But it was sweet, healthy, kind. The opposite of everything I'd grown up around. My relationship with my siblings slowly reshaped itself too. Instead of being the exhausted, frazzled go-to parent, I became the fun sister again. The one who helped Andrew with school projects, played board games with Cameron, and braided Sophia's hair into crooked pigtails while Isabella tried to copy me. The visits were structured and shorter, but they were full of joy instead of obligation. Mom was changing too, not quickly, not perfectly, but undeniably. There were still moments where she slipped, missed an appointment, forgot a lunchbox, panicked when overwhelmed. But the difference now was that she noticed. And she didn't expect me to fix it. She asked her case manager. She asked the home aid worker. She asked for help, something she'd never done before. For the first time in my life, I felt myself stepping into a role I'd never gotten to occupy. Daughter. Not stand-in mother, not emergency contact, not emotional crutch. Just daughter. It was strange, soft, quiet. I didn't hate it. Then, one Tuesday night at 10 p.m., my phone rang. My heart jumped into my throat the moment I saw the caller ID. Mom. We'd made rules, no calls after 9 unless it was an emergency. I answered anyway. Mom, I said cautiously, is everything okay? Her breath came through the phone, short and shaky. Sabrina, I need you to meet me at County General Hospital. My stomach dropped. What happened? Is it Cameron? Did his blood sugar... No, she interrupted quickly. The kids are fine. They're with the case manager. Then what? It's the baby, her voice fractured. I'm in labor. It felt like the room tilted around me. But you're only, what, 7 months? 29 weeks, she whispered. The doctor said they're going to try to stop the contractions. But if they can't, her breath hitched. I don't want to do this alone. The adoption counselor can't get here until morning. A tear slid down my cheek before I realized I was crying. I glanced at the chemistry textbook open on my bed, the one I'd been studying for the test I'd spent 2 weeks preparing for. Choices, boundaries, healing without abandoning. I took a shaking breath. I'll be there in 20 minutes. Zoe's parents didn't hesitate. They grabbed their keys the moment I explained. 10 minutes later, we pulled into the hospital parking lot, the fluorescent lights glaring against the black sky. I found Mom in room 314 of the labor and delivery ward. She sat in a hospital bed, hooked up to monitors, arms trembling. For the first time since I was a child, she looked small, not incompetent, not dramatic, just frightened. You came, she whispered. I pulled a chair close to her bedside. Of course I did. Her eyes filled. The doctor said they're giving me medication to stop the labor, but it might not work. They said 29 weeks is survivable, but risky. She broke off, choking on her words. I took her hand. Tell me what the doctor said. They said every hour counts, every minute counts. I'm scared, Sabrina. The last time she'd said my name like that was when Dad left. For the next 6 hours, I sat with her while the nurses adjusted IV drips, checked monitors, and whispered terminology I didn't understand. Mom clenched my hand through each contraction as the medication slowly started to work. Between waves of pain, she talked. About the adoption couple she'd chosen, a teacher and a nurse who'd been trying for years. About the nursery they'd painted yellow. About how she felt guilty for being relieved the baby would have a better life than she could give. And then quietly she confessed the truth I'd sensed for years. I kept having babies, she whispered, because they needed me. Because when your father left, I felt so empty I thought maybe I could fill it with someone new who wouldn't leave. I swallowed hard. Mom, we needed you. I know, she whispered, tears sliding down her cheeks. I didn't see it then. I do now. And I'm so sorry. The words were uneven and clumsy, but they were real. At 4 a.m., the contractions finally stopped. Mom dissolved into shaky sobs of relief. I exhaled for the first time in hours. She fell asleep around sunrise, her hands still wrapped around mine like she was afraid I'd disappear. I watched her for a long moment. The steady rise and fall of her chest, the tiny crack of vulnerability she usually kept locked away. And I realized something. Coming here didn't erase my boundaries. It didn't undo the months I spent rebuilding myself. It didn't make me her caretaker again. It made me human. It made me her daughter, not her replacement. As the first light of morning filtered through the hospital blinds, I slipped my phone from my pocket and texted Cameron. Mom's okay, baby's okay for now. Going home soon. Love you. His response came within seconds. Love you too. Thank you for being there, without trying to fix everything. And strangely, for the first time in years, I felt proud of both of us. 4 weeks later, I stood in front of the bathroom mirror at Zoe's house, smoothing the fabric of my navy dress. It wasn't the fanciest dress in the world, just something simple I'd bought with money from my part-time job, but it felt like a milestone. Tonight was the debate team banquet. My first real extracurricular celebration. My first accomplishment that didn't involve managing a household or keeping a child alive. My first moment that felt fully, unapologetically mine. I adjusted the hem one more time, then took a deep breath. For once, the reflection staring back at me wasn't a girl weighed down by exhaustion. She was someone with a future, someone with plans, someone with choices. My phone buzzed from the counter. Unknown number, County General Hospital. Adoption counselor. My heartbeat skipped. I swiped to answer. Hello? A warm, professional voice came through the line. Hi, Sabrina. This is Marlene, your mother's adoption counselor. I'm calling with an update. I gripped the counter. Is everything okay? Yes, she said gently. Your mother gave birth this morning. Everything in me went still. It's a healthy baby girl, she continued, her voice brightening. 6 pounds, 2 ounces. She's in the NICU for observation, but so far she's doing very well. A sound escaped me, part laugh, part sob. And your mother? I whispered. She's stable, resting, emotional, but grounded. There was a pause. Sabrina, she asked if you'd like to come meet the baby before she goes home with her adoptive parents. My breath caught in my chest. Before she leaves? Yes. I stared at my reflection, my makeup half done, the dress I'd chosen carefully, the vision of my night shifting beneath my feet. A small part of me wanted to say no, wanted to hold my boundaries tight and high. But another part, an older part, whispered softly, You won't regret holding a baby who won't grow up the way you did. I'll be there, I said. Tell my mom I'll be there. Zoe's mom drove me to the hospital. We can stop by after, I insisted, not wanting to cancel my banquet, but she shook her head. Your team will congratulate you tomorrow, she said. Babies don't wait. At County General, I followed the signs to the NICU. White halls, soft beeping monitors, the faint antiseptic smell that always feels like grief and hope woven together. A nurse guided me in quietly. My mother sat in a rocking chair, hair pulled back, wearing the kind of soft hospital gown that made her look gentler somehow. In her arms was a bundle of soft blankets and the tiniest little face I had ever seen. Sabrina, she whispered when she saw me, come here. My feet felt anchored and feather light all at once as I approached. Mom shifted slightly so I could see her. The baby had a full head of dark hair and a tiny wrinkle between her eyebrows, like she was already suspicious of the world. She yawned, then made a small squeaky sound that nearly unraveled me. She's beautiful, I breathed. Mom nodded, raw emotion twisting her features. She looks like Cameron did, and a little like you. Does she have a name yet? I asked. Not from me, Mom said softly. Her adoptive parents will choose one. They're waiting in the family lounge, giving me a few moments with her. There was something in her voice I'd never heard before. Humility, gratitude, letting go. Can I asked, motioning slightly. Mom blinked in surprise, then nodded. I washed my hands, slipped the NICU gown over my dress, and carefully sat. Mom placed the baby in my arms, guiding my hands like I was holding a delicate universe. She weighed almost nothing. Warm, soft, a miracle I didn't have to raise. The tightness in my chest loosened into something bittersweet. She'll grow up loved, I whispered, without having to become the caretaker. Mom swallowed thickly. That's why I'm doing this. She looked at the baby with a trembling smile. I want her to have what I couldn't give you, she said, or Cameron, or Andrew. I'm learning now, Sabrina. Really learning. But I'm still healing, and it wouldn't be fair to bring her into that. I looked up at her, really looked at her, and for the first time, she felt like a woman, not just a mother. Broken, trying, human. I'm proud of you, I said quietly. Her eyes filled instantly. I am proud of you too, sweetheart, more than you know. We sat there in silence, the baby making tiny breaths that felt like second chances. After a few minutes, Mom exhaled shakily. They're ready to meet her. I nodded and stood, handing the newborn back with careful reverence. Mom held her close, kissed her forehead, and whispered something I couldn't hear. Then 2 people entered, nervous, teary-eyed, the energy of people who had dreamed of this for years. A woman with kind eyes and a man who held a small yellow blanket the same shade as the nursery they'd prepared. Mom placed the baby in the woman's arms. It was like watching a ripple of joy wash across the room. Something inside me settled. A piece of my childhood I'd been trying to repair finally clicked into place. When the couple left, cradling their daughter, Mom reached for my hand. Sabrina, she whispered, will you ever come home? I took a breath, steady, clear, honest. I don't know, I said, but I'll be part of your life, just not in the way I was before. Her shoulders slumped in relief. That's enough. That's more than enough. That night, after Zoe's mom dropped me off, I went straight to my room. The debate banquet was half over, but I didn't care. I sat at my desk with trembling hands, opened my laptop, and clicked on the Common app. My personal essay glowed on the screen. The parentification of Sabrina Ellington, how raising my mother's children taught me about boundaries, resilience, and the courage to save yourself. For the first time, I didn't hesitate. I hit submit. 3 days after I submitted my college applications, life settled into a quiet hum, an almost unbelievable calm compared to the chaos I'd grown up navigating. It wasn't perfect. It wasn't cinematic. It was something better, sustainable. I woke up for school without dread. I did homework without listening for crying. I made plans without calculating which sibling might need an emergency pickup. For the first time in 7 years, there was no invisible leash pulling me back home. One afternoon, I found myself on Zoe's family porch again, my favorite sanctuary. The wooden boards were warm from the sun, and a gentle breeze rustled the wind chimes her mom insisted were spiritually cleansing, though Zoe claimed they just scared the squirrels. Her parents were inside making dinner, laughter floating through the open kitchen window. The smell of garlic bread drifted outside, warm and comforting, a reminder that safety wasn't loud or dramatic. Sometimes it was just a well-cooked meal in a house where no one expected you to solve everything. Zoe sat beside me on the porch swing, scrolling through her phone. "You've been quiet," she said, glancing up. "Everything okay?" I nodded slowly. "Just thinking." "About your mom?" "About everything," I said. "The baby, college, Cameron, whether my life is finally allowed to be my own." Zoe set her phone aside and faced me fully. "Can I ask you something kind of deep?" I braced myself. "Sure. Are you ever scared you'll turn into her?" My breath hitched, but not from pain, from recognition. I nodded. "Every day." She squeezed my knee gently. "But you won't." "How do you know?" "Because you're already doing the thing she never did," Zoe said simply. "You're breaking the cycle before it ever has a chance to touch your future kids." Future kids. The phrase landed softly, like a feather drifting into the room. I hadn't let myself imagine that far ahead, not because I didn't want it, but because I wasn't sure the version of me that existed 6 months ago had the capacity to dream for herself. I looked at Zoe. "You really think I'm breaking the cycle?" She raised an eyebrow. "Honey, you're not just breaking it. You've disassembled it, burned the instruction manual, and blocked the manufacturer." I snorted, too loud, and the porch swing creaked. Zoe grinned triumphantly. "But seriously," she continued, "look at your life right now. Look at your siblings. Look at your mom. Everything is different because you chose to walk away long enough to show everyone what needed to change." Her words hovered in the air, warm and heavy with truth. Later that evening, as I curled onto the couch with a hot mug of tea, my phone buzzed with a message from Cameron. "Cameron, Mom made dinner again. Real dinner. Not frozen chicken nuggets." I smiled. Another message followed. "Cameron, she helped me with my math homework too. She didn't even get frustrated." Then, "Cameron, it feels normal, like we're a real family. Weird, right?" My eyes stung, but not with sadness. Me. "That's not weird. That's progress. I'm proud of you. Proud of her too." He sent back a heart emoji, something he rarely used. A second later, another message popped up. This one from Andrew. "Andrew, can you come to my school's Halloween party tomorrow? Mom's volunteering, but I want you there too." I laughed softly. Andrew always had a way of seeing the world in the simplest, sweetest terms. Me. "Of course I'll be there. Save me a cupcake." 3 dots flashed, paused, then, "Andrew, I saved you too." I pressed a hand to my chest. These messages were healing. Not perfect, not dramatic, not a miracle, just real. Zoe's mom poked her head into the living room. "Sabrina, dinner's ready. Lasagna tonight," she said, then winked. "Tell me if you can taste the secret ingredient." The kitchen lights were warm, golden. The table was set for 5. Zoe's dad wore his usual apron that said "World's Okayest Chef." I stepped inside, and for a fleeting second, something inside me went still. This was what home was supposed to feel like. Not the place you were needed most, but the place where you were allowed to simply exist. We sat down to eat, and the moment I took my first bite, the flavors hit me like comfort wrapped in cheese. "Is the secret ingredient oregano?" I asked. Zoe's dad gasped. "How did you know?" Zoe rolled her eyes. "Dad, literally everyone puts oregano in lasagna." Laughter bubbled around the table, easy and warm. I didn't realize how hungry I'd been, not for food, but for this, for belonging without responsibility, for care that didn't demand repayment, for the simple luxury of feeling young. That night, after dinner, I slipped into the guest room, my room, and opened my laptop again. The application submitted banner on my Common App portal glowed like a promise. I traced my finger lightly over the screen. The parentification of Sabrina Ellington. How raising my mother's children taught me about boundaries, resilience, and the courage to save yourself. For years, I thought survival meant holding everything together, even at the cost of breaking myself. But now I knew better. Survival wasn't about enduring, it was about choosing. Walking away when the weight wasn't yours, letting the world shift and trusting that the people who loved you would shift with it. My siblings were safe. My mother was healing. The baby was loved and wanted, and I was finally free to become someone more than a placeholder parent. Zoe knocked lightly on my door. We're going to watch a dumb rom-com. You coming? Yeah, I said, closing the laptop. I'm coming. As I followed her down the hall, my phone buzzed again. A final text from Cameron. Guess what? Mom put your name on the family calendar for next week's visit so she won't forget. Like a real mom. I smiled, deep and slow. You know what I learned through all of this? The best revenge isn't shouting or blaming or proving someone wrong. It's breaking the cycle so no one else ever has to heal from the same wounds you did. And for the first time in 8 years, I wasn't living for survival. I was living for myself.